What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Fall Obsession podcast episode brought to you guys by our friends over at Hoot Camo. My name is Sam Thrash. I'm your show host over here. Appreciate you guys pressing play on another one of our episodes. This week, have a returning guest to the show, although it has been a very, very long time since she was on the show. Miss Courtney Carroll is joining me for this week's podcast. She is an avid outdoors woman, big time turkey hunter, and now also a game warden for the state of Florida. Courtney's definitely had a career change and some other life changes since we last had her on the show for episode number 10. She is one of the original guests from way back in the day, over 5 years ago that we recorded that episode. So definitely a lot to catch up on and talk about in this podcast. Having her back on the show now for 248. We've done a lot of podcasting since then, but if you guys want to go back and listen to that episode 10, the first time she was on the show, see the early stages of Fall Obsession podcast production quality at the same time, you're more than welcome to, and you can find it on all the podcast apps. But I invited Courtney to come back on here, not just talk hunting, but really wanted to visit with her about her profession and some of the things that she encounters and deals with as a game warden. Courtney did go through the official channels with her agency to be able to do this podcast. We're very grateful for her doing that, but she wanted to make sure that she was fully prepared and able to talk about these things and share some information with us. And I value somebody coming on the show and sharing that perspective, a perspective that you don't always hear on a hunting podcast, talking about fish and game law enforcement officers' perspective. So hope you guys enjoy this podcast. It is a good one. On top of just being with a game warden, we're talking to a game warden from Florida where you have a lot of different hunting and fishing dynamics and demographics in that state. So definitely a lot to discuss. But before we get to the episode with Courtney, we're going to take care of the housekeeping real quick. You guys know the drill. Whatever podcast platform you are streaming this episode on, please make sure that you are followed, subscribed, you've liked the show, you've left a review, you got the notifications turned on. Whatever they have an option for you to do there, please go ahead and do it. We are on all major podcast streaming platforms. Wherever you like to listen to shows, we are there, as well as Carbon TV, Waypoint TV, YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, not just for the podcast videos that we put on there every Thursday, but also for all of our other content. We have some new show episodes that have come out recently. We got some films in the works. We got all sorts of cool stuff. So be sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel. Social media, all the normal places, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X. We are on all of those platforms. Make sure you are following Fall Obsession for daily updates from our brand and our team. Fallobsession.com is the website. All of the content filters through there. You will find the podcast, the shows, the films, the gear reviews, the articles, the wild game recipes, online store where you can purchase apparel. All that kind of stuff is found at fallobsession.com. And then last but not least, if you guys have not heard of Carbon TV, please make sure that you go check it out. It is a free streaming app for hunters and outdoorsmen. You will find hundreds of different hunting shows and podcasts streaming on the Carbon platform from a bunch of different genres in the hunting and outdoor world. Guys, don't miss the opportunity to get plugged in on the Carbon TV network. You will find 4 different Fall Obsession produced shows on that platform. This podcast, our staff-inspired video podcast series called Couch Chats, is on Carbon TV, as well as our 2 different hunting shows, Texas Dirt and Midwest Mindset. Guys, go check out Carbon TV and start streaming today. And with that, we're going to get Courtney in here and start our conversation with her. You guys are listening to another Fall Obsession podcast.
The power lies within that middle ground.
Hunting transformed my life.
I think you have to be built somewhat different.
That Dale Brisby's a super puncher.
Hey, we need to get Pop-Tarts on the next Walmart order. I'm serious.
Because to come into this country and stay dedicated to that, it was pretty awesome.
If it's only for one, then you've done your job.
We have to do what's right for the wildlife, and that's our responsibility as hunters.
Fall Obsession Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to another Fall Obsession podcast episode driven by Hoot Camo. I'm Sam Thrash, your show host, and my guest this week is a returning guest, technically, to the show, but it has been a long time since she was with us, Miss Courtney Carroll. Welcome back to Fall Obsession podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This will be a good catch-up session.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this. We were just talking about it before we start recording. A lot's changed on both of our ends, Fall Obsession and your end personally, coming into this thing, and we'll get into some of that. But I am going to draw attention to the obvious for those watching the video version is you are the first guest to show up wearing the same shirt as me. That's never happened before. So appreciate the support of the Fall Obsession brand.
Of course. Well, honestly, it's one of my favorite bow hunting shirts. I wear it all the time.
Awesome.
Since y'all sent it to me for doing the last podcast, I love it.
That's awesome. I love to hear it. This is as well one of my favorite t-shirts, just a clean, comfortable look, and yeah, reflects everything I love about bow hunting and this brand. So yeah, it's a good choice. Well, just like I said, it's a lot's changed since we had you on the show before, and if our listeners are curious, it's episode 10 is when you were on the show. This is 248. So we've had a lot of podcasts recorded in between then, and if anyone goes back and listens to that other episode, they'll probably hear a different quality of audio and production standpoint, from Fall Obsession side. But for listeners who don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into hunting in the outdoors.
Yeah, of course. Well, let me just backtrack a little bit.
Sure.
You don't really need to go listen to episode 10 just I feel like so much has changed since then. I'm a totally different hunter, but there still is some good educational moments in there. But no, I've learned a ton since then. That was 5 years ago or something?
Yeah, 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So, a little bit about me and how I got into hunting. My dad, he was a really big hunter. So growing up, grew up mostly deer hunting. So through archery, muzzleloader, rifle, and deer dog hunting. I don't know if y'all have that in Texas at all. But it's just a different season, during rifle where you have a pack of hounds and they chase the deer out of the woods and, you shoot it.
Yeah.
So grew up dog hunting, loved it. Totally different nowadays. Things have totally advanced with GPS collars and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
But turkey hunting, I didn't really get into until, let's see, 2017. So my dad really wasn't a turkey hunter. I was kind of self-taught and then had a few friends that turkey hunted as well. So didn't really get into it until then, but I became hooked after killed my first turkey by myself. So that was a huge accomplishment. And then I've dabbled in some duck hunting. My brother was a really big duck hunter, so did a little bit of that. And no, mostly deer throughout the years. So I've been really passionate about it. Killed my first spike when I was 16. And honestly, I'm glad it was a buck because now I have that memory on the wall, even though it's a spike about that big, but it's still a memory.
I think my head hides it on the podcast video. Maybe I can move. There you go. You can see. I have a little one myself hanging on the wall that represents a similar memory. So I completely understand.
It's not the size. It's all about the hunt.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's a bit about how I got into hunting. Did you want me to transition into how I got into what I do now?
Yeah, we can talk about that. I will backtrack just a second because you mentioned right before you kind of got into your bio a little bit there. You kind of playfully mentioned that you don't have to go back and listen to episode 10 and everything, but you also said, and I forget your exact words, but kind of a history lesson at the same time, right? Kind of shows the evolution and shows where you came from. I actually recorded a podcast just a little while ago with another gentleman, and he has his own show, and we were kind of talking about that a little bit, how you go back and listen to some of those older episodes and you kind of cringe a little bit because you're a different person now, or the show might be a different quality, whatever it might be. But I also value that, and those still being accessible, not just for the public, but for us ourselves as well. Being able to go back and see our own personal journeys and everything through that, I think is pretty cool. But yes, we can get into kind of where you have gone since then, because you had a complete career change since we last spoke. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
That's correct. So actually, I kind of remember leaving off at the end of the podcast being like, this may be some of my last better years because I am getting into a career change and
I do remember that.
have as much time. So that career change is being a game warden with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission in Florida. So the academy was pretty long, and the application process is actually very challenging. But let me backtrack a little bit to kind of why I got into that. So of course I have the hunting background. It's something I'm passionate about, and I want to continue to hunt, whether that's for me or my nieces or my children. I want them to continue to hunt and fish. So I think that's really important in why we have law enforcement and game wardens, to protect those fish, wildlife, and resources. So I kind of was unsure of what I wanted to be going into college. I was like, okay, I think I want to be a vet. So I thought more about it, and that was a lot of school. And I got to the point where I was like, I don't think I could start putting dogs down. Like, I would be crying every day. Like, I love animals too much. I just couldn't do it. So then got into biology, started my major with biology, and kind of got into, okay, do I want to be a biologist in wildlife, or do I want to be more so like game warden? And I did a ride along with the Alachua County Sheriff's Office. And so that's strictly just cop, nothing to do with game warden or anything like that. I did try to do a couple ride-alongs with the game wardens, but you can't do a ride-along until you have an application in. And I was only like a sophomore in college, so I wasn't even close to graduating yet. So I did a ride-along with Alachua County, and I fell in love with the chase of the law enforcement side. So how I kind of think that they're similar in whether it's deer hunting or turkey hunting, and then being a cop, is I remember sitting in the truck in our ride along, and then all of a sudden we get a call and we got to go fast. So that reminded me a lot of like deer dog hunting. When you're in the truck and you hear the dogs and they jump, and you got to head to where they're about to cross. So it reminded me a lot of that, and it just like gets your adrenaline pumping. And so after that, I was like, I do not want to be stuck in an office all day. I definitely want to be out and about in some sort of law enforcement aspect. So that's how I transitioned from vet to biologist to then warden.
So when you begin this journey, or you decide this is what you're going to do, what is schooling like to get established in that role? What all do you have to go through?
Okay, so once I realized when I was in college that's kind of what I wanted to gear towards, I geared my major toward criminal justice and my minor in environmental studies. So I had a little bit of that also. You don't need a college degree to become a Florida Game Warden. You just need a GED or high school diploma, but it does help you in the long run. You get a pay incentive and then also the education behind it. So the application process is pretty long. You have to put in your application, then you wait. Once you finally hear back, you go to do a swim test and a physical test. So it's like an obstacle course, and you have to pass that in a certain amount of time. And then if you pass both of those, you go through an interview portion. And to be straight up with you, my first round of the application, I did not pass the interview. Well, not pass, but I did not get a high enough interview score to beat out 300 other people.
Right.
So
Wow.
I did not get in my very first application process. So what I took from that was I needed more experience. So around the time that I was interviewing with you for that last podcast, I was guiding for the NWTF. So getting some community service hours and experience, to be honest with you. And then I was also doing some other community service stuff. So that helped a lot with my resume. I also did a few more ride-alongs. That helped a lot, and practiced on my interview portion. So I went through second round and got through the interview portion. Then you have a psychological exam, and then a background investigation. And then once you pass all of that, they'll call you with an offer for a county. And the very first offer that they offered me was Monroe County, which is down in the Keys. And that was my worst fear because I did not know how to drive a boat. I didn't know the difference between a lane snapper and a mutton snapper. There was a lot that I did not know. I came from the woods. I did not grow up around a lot of saltwater stuff. So this was my dream job. I took that opportunity. I said, okay, I'm going to gain as much experience as I can down there and be a more well-rounded officer. They're going to teach me how to drive a boat. They're going to teach me the different ways to pick out all these grouper and all these snapper for fish ID. And I'm going to have to learn all the new regulations that I don't know. So it was a very long academy process, but I took Monroe. 6 months. Our academy is 6 months long. So the first, I want to say 3 or 4 months. Yeah, the first 4 months is just basic law enforcement, where every other cop goes through that. And then you pass the state exam and you're officially sworn. And then we have like the last 2 months is what we call the breakout portion. So that is going to be specific to FWC. So that will go over man tracking, search and rescue, vessel operations, like all the stuff that we need to know that every other cop doesn't need to know. So that was the academy. And then once you get out of the academy, you have actually a field training portion. And I want to say the field training portion was 2 months, although it felt like a lot longer. Where basically you have 3 or 4 other officers that have already been in that county for a while, and they're there to train you. Yeah. So like the first couple weeks, you're just sitting and watching, and you may like drive the boat a little bit. You might do a couple stops, but for the most part, you're just looking and watching at how things are done. And then the middle portion is going to be you getting more in depth, you getting your feet wet and more stuff. And then lastly, the third portion is the shadow phase, where they're just watching you and you're doing everything. So that field training portion is probably where you get the most experience out of everything.
Hey guys, sorry to cut y'all off from the conversation. We'll get back to it in just a second, but first I want to tell you guys about Hoot Camo. Hoot Camo is one of the best camouflage brands out there for the blue collar hunter. The prices, you can't beat them. The patterns are extremely versatile. They work in so many different environments. I have worn Hoot Camo hunting whitetails, hogs, and turkeys down here in the hardwoods, the mesquites, the scrub brush of Texas. I've worn it in the flatland plains of eastern Colorado hunting mule deer. I've even worn it in the mountains of central Idaho hunting elk. It works in so many different places. It is extremely high quality gear, extremely warm, holds up well against the elements. You cannot beat it. Go to hootcamo.com, use the code FallObsession15 on your next order, no matter how big or small it is, and check out everything that Hoot Camo has on there for you guys.
So yeah, and then I was down in Monroe County for 2 years.
Yeah, got to cut your teeth a little bit down there. So that's awesome. So I know when you kind of mentioned this back when we recorded 5 years ago, and like, hey, this is a possibility. One of the things that you mentioned at the time was that I don't know how it's going to affect my future hunting opportunities. So what is that like for a game warden who is, enforcing the law on one side, but also enjoys to hunt? Like, as far as the schedule, those opportunities, what's that like?
It was tough to start out with. I know definitely during the FTO process, when I was still in training, you can't really take leave at all because that is your main focus. And I totally understood that. And honestly, you're so stressed and you have so much that you're trying to learn at one time. Like, I mean, you can't really take time off. You got to stay focused. So then after I got off probation, living in the Keys, it really wasn't that bad because you didn't have to work hunting season. There is no hunting down there. So it wasn't mandatory that I worked opening day of turkey or I worked opening day of deer. I could take off and go back home and hunt. So it was a lot easier there. But now that I've transitioned to an inland county in north central Florida, it's tough not being able to hunt on opening mornings. Not saying that you can't.
Right.
You can, but I am still a go-getter at this point. I'm 5 years in. I'm still ready to go and make cases. And honestly, I think I get as much of an adrenaline rush working it than I do actually hunting. But to also answer your question, our schedule allows us 3 days off. We work 4 days, so 4 tens, and then 3 days off.
Okay.
So depending on the schedule, those 3 days off, I can go hunt. It's not too bad.
Yeah, that ain't bad at all. I'm a fireman, so I understand the luxury of a schedule like that. I go in for 48 hours and then I'm off for 96. So that 96 during hunting season can give you a lot of opportunities. I don't know how our Texas game wardens schedules work. I do know that the county that our hunting property is in only has one game warden assigned to it, and it is a very heavily hunted county, and that dude is always busy. That's about the extent of what I know. We abide by the law, and because of that, we don't ever see him, and we just, like, every time, the couple of times I have had to call him for an issue, it's always been, yeah, I'm kind of busy right now. So
Yeah.
So
well, that's a question I gotta ask you.
Sure.
Because I'm sure you're up almost all night when you're on shift. So say the next day is opening morning. Do you stay up all night and then go hunt all the next morning?
Normally I don't go hunting after I get off. If I am that worried about hunting on an opening day, then it either needs to fall somewhere in the middle of that 96 off, or I need to take leave time of some sort to facilitate that happening. I will say, like for whitetail down here in Texas, our our archery season opens a month before the general season, which is any weapon. Um, but that's the month of October essentially. It opens the last weekend in September. And it in Texas, it is still so stinking hot. I don't remember the last time I hunted the actual like opening day, opening morning of bow season, just because I'm trying to past few years I've been trying to hunt a little smarter. And so I'm not just going out there to go out there. I'm watching my deer and trying to figure out exactly what they're doing and when they're doing it, and what my bucks are doing, and plan accordingly. So that's
That
the
makes
goal. And I also don't like hunting in 90-degree temperatures. That's not as enjoyable for me. So normally I wait. Uh, I don't go out there on opening day just because most of the time here recently. So that's my own personal thought. But
sense. Yeah.
I've also had that itch before where it's like I gotta get out there, and I know what that feels like too. You've waited so long for opening day that you gotta get out there. And if that is the case, then I'll try to set myself up for does or something like that, and maybe not walk all over my prime buck spots that I'm waiting for just yet.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Well, actually, I have a pretty cool story for you.
Yeah, let's
Not
go.
not to brag too much, but
Brag away. This is the place to do it.
I just thought of it because my first year working the central um, county, and this is my first year working for turkey bait, which I think is a little different in Texas, but here in Florida, you can't hunt over 100 yards of bait when, sorry, I said that wrong. You can't hunt within 100 yards of any bait station when you're hunting for turkey.
Okay.
Um, so I mean, it's like crack. It's easy to kill them over bait
All
here.
right.
So this is my very first year working it, and I found a spot that was like perfect. It butted up right next to this wildlife management area that no one really goes into because it's not hunted, it's not allowed to be hunted, and nobody walks through it. So that was going to be my access to that field. And what they had was they had a gravity feeder with cracked corn, and then they had a ground blind 20 yards from the feeder. So I said, okay, this is going to be a done deal. Open in the morning, they're going to come there and hunt it 100%. So I go and get there super, super early in the morning, and I'm setting up in the bushes, and it starts getting daylight. I start hearing turkeys gobble. I don't hear or see anybody come to the blind. And I'm like, well, shoot, is this a no-show? Ended up being a no-show. So turkeys had already flown down to the field and gone a different way, which was a little weird. I was like, why didn't they go to the corn right there? They went opposite way. So then I start walking kind of back to the truck, and all of a sudden I hear 3 shotgun shots in the direction where I saw the turkeys kind of go. So I hurried up, I looked at my map, and I see that there's another field right there that I hadn't looked at. So ran that way, struck out, and finally got to where I could see the field through the fence line. And I see 3 guys walking back to their truck with a turkey over their shoulder. And I was like, oh, okay. Which I had no idea what I was walking into. I was just like, okay, well, if all else fails, I'll do a license check and make sure they registered their bird. So I run up there, and I'm out of breath. I'm like, hey, looks like y'all did good today. And I see they had 2 turkeys, and they're like silent. It's 2 kids and their dad. And
Okay.
so I was already starting to get like weird vibes. So I start asking them, like, where'd you kill him? And the dad said, oh, right down there in the field. We were 100 yards away from the corn. And I was like, oh, okay. So the fact that he just automatically said that piqued my interest a little bit.
Yeah.
So I start going over their licensing and making sure they register the bird, which they hadn't done yet. Which in Florida, you're supposed to do that. We don't have tags, like physical tags. What you're supposed to do is on your phone or either a printed out version, you're supposed to register that bird. And it's super simple to do before you even move it.
Yeah.
And so I asked the dad, I told the kids to just stay right there. I think one was a minor and the other one was over 18. So I was just like, y'all just stay here. I'll have your dad take me down here and show me where y'all shot him. And so one thing that I thought was weird when we were walking down there, the dad had mentioned he picked up one of the shells and had it in his pocket, or two of the shells. And I remember hearing 3 shots. So I'm like, okay, I know there's another shell somewhere and maybe in the gun, who knows? So thank goodness I grew up, or I have experience hunting, because I'm curious, what are some of the things you would look for in like a crime scene of trying to figure out where a bird was shot?
Well, based on what you just said, right? Okay, there could be another shell laying on the ground somewhere. I don't know exactly what kind of terrain or brush, or I guess you said they're in a field essentially, but depending on where the hunters were at, I would expect there to be some sort of sign on the ground that they'd been standing or sitting somewhere. Wherever the bird was, probably feathers, right? Feathers, or maybe just a little bit of blood, something like that. Yeah, those are the first things that come to mind. Just me as I'm not a detective or a game warden or anything, but I think y'all do some detective work in what you do for sure. But
I'm nothing crazy, but I'm sure you know about a wad also.
oh yeah, yeah.
So that'll tell you exactly pretty much where a bird was shot or where they were aiming. So the dad brings me down to the field and I see in the back corner of the field, I see the feeder and I see a ground blind right next to it. So he shows me on this side of the field, there's a couple trees right here, which there was no cover whatsoever. So me being a turkey hunter, I'm like, 2 kids sitting here, they ain't gonna be still right here. Yeah. There's no cover whatsoever. So I start looking around and I don't see any like imprints of where somebody would be sitting, like you said. And if you're sitting there for even 30 minutes, there's going to be a little bit of an imprint or kicked around some leaves or something like that. So I didn't see any of that whatsoever. So I kept asking him, I was like, is it right here? And he kept looking around. And so I start looking in the field. I don't see any feathers. I don't see anything. So then as I'm like looking around, he finally says, okay, they shot him from the blind. I told him not to sit there, but they did. So I go over there and blood on the ground, feathers on the ground, found the wad. And then the other ejected shell was actually in the ground blind. So that put them in the ground blind shooting 20 yards from the feeder. So that was one of my very first bait cases that was all pretty much luck. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. And they're like, we almost got away with it.
What was funny was the first thing he said to me, he said, where did you come from? Because the closest road was nowhere near where they were. And obviously I didn't have my truck parked out in front of their house either. But that's like, I don't know. I'm pretty driven and I will walk a far ways through some swamp, through some stuff to make a case. But what I'm kind of getting to is what made this day even better. So make my first turkey case. And then I was like, because I had worked a very, very early morning. So I want to say I got off work around 1 o'clock. And I was like, well, it's opening day of turkey season. And I'm not really super tired. Let me go see if I can just go call a turkey in the woods and kill one. So I go out there and do my first sequence. And honestly, at this point, I'm just like relaxing. Like I had already had the best day ever. So and then do my second sequence, and I hear a gobble directly behind me. And I'm like, are you joking me right now? So I get ready, and it's not one tom, but it's two toms, and they come in perfectly to my decoys. And I waited till their heads lined up perfect and shot them. So,
Wow.
like, how crazy is that I
That's
could
awesome.
go work, make a case, and then go tag out on opening morning?
That is really,
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah. So, and then I took a pretty good nap after that.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
Uh,
So, like in a date like that, right? Opening day of whatever species seasons are obviously you can't, well, and I mean you can maybe shed some more light on how it works, but I can't imagine that you're trying to or able to without cause scope out a bunch of private property or stuff for wherever some fishy stuff might be going on. You might be able to elaborate more on that. But are you guys actively looking for those spots to kind of post up on opening mornings and opening days to, you know, I don't know. What do you look for to try and figure out where that's going to happen? I guess that's what I'm getting at.
yeah, so I can't give away all of my
Yeah,
secrets.
don't give away all the secrets.
But to be honest with you, the how I found this spot, not where I made the case, but the original spot was I got up in our helicopter, and we have a pilot, and so we flew over some of the county, and I mean that's easy to see a feeder and a ground blind in a field. I think we ended up finding 3 or 4 spots, and that one just looked the most promising to me. And plus, I had a better way of accessing it through public land.
Hey folks, if you guys are in the North Texas area like I am, then you need to go to Bear River Archery and Pro Shop in Van Alstyne, Texas. Justin and the guys up there have an incredible operation set up. They will take great care of you and all of your archery needs. They are the official bow shop in North Texas, a Fall Obsession. I love going there, and I'm picky. If you guys know me, I am very selective on who I let work on my bow. I will let Justin work on my bow. They do great stuff. Check out Bear River Archery and let them know that Fall Obsession sent you.
Where, I mean, it's hard to hide our trucks. So that was just the best idea for me to do.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of the other, as I rambled on to get to that question, the other question I kind of formed in my mind being, um, for private property and everything, how does it, what are y'all's restrictions, limitations to be able to enter private property for various reasons? What's that look like for a game warden? Because I've heard that I think it's game wardens and like livestock commission officers, for the most part, in a lot of states, are able to um, go places and have access to areas, properties that your normal police officer or sheriff deputy might not be able to. Is that true?
That is true. I know some things might be changing soon in Florida, as I've heard they have in other states. But as of right now, we don't like to push the limits. I don't like walking on people's property. I wouldn't want somebody on my property.
Right.
So, but if I know that it's a lease or a hunt club or just a tract of land that looks like it might be hunted, yeah, I mean, we can look for turkey bait specifically. We don't I mean, because it's legal to bait deer here. So that's not what we're looking for. We're
Right.
looking for during turkey season, turkey bait is what we're looking for.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, so some of these kind of moving through some of the other outline points that I have here for you, I did want to ask you about kind of specific to Florida. You have what I imagine most states have more than I probably realize. Texas probably has more than I'm just consciously thinking about, but you have such a wide range of, wildlife demographics, right? From, what you have roaming around the woods to what you have in the waters in lakes. And then, I mean, excuse me, I haven't even asked how it works with anything deep sea fishing, if y'all, how involved you guys get in that. But what's that look like from a game warden's perspective out there? Like it's to me, it's a lot of stuff that you got to be well versed in. And I imagine you're probably more in tune with what's relevant to your assignment. But how does that look in a general sense?
Yeah, so exactly what you said. Like, you learn to know what to know based on what county you work, and what area you work. But just for an example, I brought this to show you the thickness of our statutes and admin codes
That is a
that
huge book.
all have to know. That's insane.
Oh, wow.
So obviously nobody knows everything. But if we need to know something, I mean, sometimes we got to look it up. It is what it is. But for the most part, like, the main things that you run into, that you pretty much know by heart. And me growing up with it, that helped a lot, just knowing the regulations already. So to get into, like, kind of what all we encompass, so we have statewide jurisdiction, and a little bit different, I think, than most game wardens is we also have an agreement with the National Marine Fisheries and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So we're federally deputized. So that allows us to not only enforce state laws, but also the federal laws as well. So that comes into play with federal fisheries. So anything past 3 nautical miles out is going to be federal waters, and there's different regulations in federal waters. So we got to be able to enforce those as well. And then, of course, the federal duck stamp. There's the Lacey Act. Are you familiar with the Lacey Act?
You can go through it. I am not super familiar with it. I kind of have a superficial understanding, I would say.
So basically, it just prevents, say, for example, someone in Florida killed a turkey out of season and they're from Georgia and they transported it back to Georgia. We can then follow them and they can still be criminally charged for that, even though it's now no longer now in Florida. And same vice versa. If it was killed illegally in Georgia and then came to Florida, same thing.
Okay.
So that helps us a lot, not only with just like things killed illegally, but also like the wildlife trade as well.
Gotcha.
Another thing that's federally regulated by us is the endangered species, of course, and then Marine Mammal Protection Act, and then the Magnuson-Stevenson Act, which that's just basically all of the federal fish regulations.
Gotcha. So have you ever worked anything or like offshore, kind of in that deep sea fishing category? Or
Yeah, so we did a lot of that when we were in the Keys. You have a lot of the charter boats when they go off the Atlantic 3 miles, you're not going to catch grouper and snapper and wahoo and all that. You're not going to catch that in state waters. You got to go out into the federal waters. So some of the things that they need are their federal permits. So that can allow them to catch the highly migratory species, the pelagic, stuff like that. So So that's with like the charter boats out deep sea. It's rare that we go out there. We usually like to check them on their way back in. And then we realize, yes, you're in state waters, but y'all are coming from federal waters. So we go off of those federal regulations.
Gotcha.
Another cool thing that I got to do every now and then was we have an offshore patrol vessel unit, and that's basically just like a really big boat, and they're specifically going out there for federal fisheries. So some of the ones in the Keys that we checked were shrimpers, and they are way out there in the Gulf and the Atlantic. But most of the ones that we checked were in the Gulf, and that was a pretty cool experience because number one, I learned a lot, and number two, like these guys live out on those boats like for days while they're out there harvesting commercially. So it's pretty cool to see how everything works.
Yeah, I would imagine so. What would be any other circumstances that would require y'all to go out there? Would it be like if you got a specific call about a tip about an issue or something? Because I understand it's a whole lot more beneficial to check them when they're coming back. So
correct. I mean, search and rescues. Sometimes we got to go out there. Most of the time, Coast Guard will take care of that, though. They're mostly federal, and honestly, we worked pretty hand in hand with Coast Guard and Border Patrol down there in the Keys. Like we all pretty much worked together. Towards the end of being stationed in the Keys, there were a lot of migrants coming in by boat, whether it be from Haiti or Cuba, I think is what it was. Either Haiti or Cubans. So it's amazing how they make these boats. It's insane. There was one boat that made landfall in Key Largo, and it had close to 200 Haitian migrants on it.
Oh, wow.
It was insane. So, I mean, when it comes to those, I mean, unfortunately, the Keys is still dealing with it. We still have deployments that go down there and help with the migrant mission. But our main mission is public safety in that aspect. That's pretty much Coast Guard's baby and Border Patrol's baby, whatever they want to do with them. We're just making sure nobody drowns and nobody dies.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very neat. It's always interesting. There's all these little, I don't know, getting to talk to so many people on a show. I get to dive into some stuff that just, I don't know, never really crossed my mind before. And yeah, things that you see that most folks just don't even really think about in their everyday lives. So it's interesting.
And actually, we just stopped doing the Operation Lone Star deployments, but we were being deployed to Texas on the border, and helping them out with their migrant crisis.
Your fish and wildlife officers were being deployed? Really? I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Huh. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. Helping out on the airboats on river they were on. But whatever the river that borders, you might know better than I do.
Oh, I do know. I should be able to say this off the top of my head, but golly, now you're making me look bad. So, I do want to ask about, and we were kind of exchanging some notes on this before we were the Rio Grande. Golly, I should have known that off the top of my head. Golly, I had to figure it out. We were talking kind of beforehand about some notes and discussion points and everything, kind of helping prep you for the episode. But you had mentioned wildlife conflict calls and kind of talking a little bit about that. First off, and this is not just for our listeners, this is for me too. Explain to us what constitutes a wildlife conflict call. What is that?
Um, so it's anything to do with wildlife, not domesticated animals, whether it is a sighting, it's an attack. We get those calls. So, for example, I went to a call about an alligator attacking a dog. Um, and that's just something we got to investigate. So we go there, we take pictures of the wound, if there is any wound, we take pictures of the area, and then we get with the biologist. We work hand in hand with the biologist because they want all of that attack data or sighting data. There's not always a report with a sighting, but anything attack wise on a person or livestock or any animal, they want reports on that. So it could be anything from an alligator, a bear, a coyote, raccoon, a squirrel. I've had a crow. Yeah, it could be anything.
Okay. So I'm guessing that in those situations, obviously, if you guys get called to an animal attack, an animal bite, or something like that, from an alligator, you are probably showing up, I would imagine, after that attacking animal has left. Um, I'm assuming that there are situations where if that's not the case, the fish and game officers are allowed to take that animal regardless of season, right? Am I thinking correctly on that? Or are y'all trying to capture it and do something more along those lines?
So specifically when it comes to alligators, we can capture it and then we'll see what SNAP wants to do. So SNAP is our statewide alligator program, our nuisance program, and we have specific trappers that are paid to come out here and either relocate them or dispose of them, and they have the right to do that. I mean, we are trained to wrestle alligators, but I've only done that with a few small ones. Anything bigger than 6 foot, SNAP is going to be called. But anything less than that, it's most of the time something we can handle. It honestly just depends on the situation. Like, for example, the one that I went to where it attacked the dog, and she lives on a lake. So obviously, I'm not about to go swimming to go look for this alligator. So that's going to be SNAP. So they have all the right tools and everything that they need to trap that gator. And then I'm assuming they harvest it because it's considered a nuisance alligator at that point because it's attacking dogs.
Gotcha. Okay. Is there any kind of species, whether it's on land or in water in Florida, that you would say you get more calls and issues about than any other?
To be honest, gopher tortoises.
Gopher tortoises. Okay. How so?
So I don't know if you know much about gopher tortoises.
I do not.
But they like to burrow in sandy areas. And their burrows are pretty specific. And they don't go in the water. They're not turtles, they're tortoises. And people like to build and clear property over top of them. So that's one of the main issues that we get is people either clearing property without a permit or building property without a permit. So they need specific permits through us to either relocate a certain amount of them or have permission to do whatever clearing or building they're going to do.
Gotcha.
But it's daily I hear in bordering counties, which I mean, I feel bad for them.
Hey guys, Trophy Edits is a Fall Obsession podcast partner. We all have mounts on our walls that represent a significant moment, a significant harvest in the woods for each and every one of us, and photographs can do the same. I'm sure you guys have pictures from years past, hunting with loved ones or being in the woods with family and friends that also represent those big moments. And what Trophy Edits does is they showcase those moments for you guys, just absolutely make your pictures explode, and to the level that you guys can put them on the wall and also have that memory forever represented in your home, your office, your man cave, whatever it might be. Give Trophy Edits a chance to do the work for you guys. And again, they make those pictures just absolutely awesome with their professional team of editors. So go to Trophy Edits website. The link is in the podcast description. That lets them know that you guys came from us, and use the code FALLOBSESSION at checkout to save you guys some money.
Yeah, that's not one that I would expect. I think most people, just novice and just at surface level, would probably expect it to have something to do with a gator or snakes or something else that you think of more immediately when you think of Florida. So,
Right. I mean, I guess secondly would be deer.
mhm.
Just whether it's being hit by a car or just dead on the side of the road. I mean, sometimes we got to go put them down and dispose of them. So, it's probably my least favorite part of the job.
Yeah, no, that would be challenging for sure.
Mhm.
So, this next question I wanted to ask, it's kind of gonna probably end up being a long-winded question on my side of things, but I wanted to talk about kind of a balance between ethics and legality when it comes to, you know, hunting laws, regulations, having to like being an enforcer of such. And I don't know, maybe there's some comparable things in Florida you can share, but I'll give a Texas example for starters. We one of the laws that just absolutely irks me is majority of counties in the state of Texas have what we call antler restrictions for a whitetail deer, meaning that I either have to shoot a deer that is this big or this small, right? And that's Texas's way of basically cutting out everything in the middle to where, the up and coming bucks have a chance to get bigger. It's their blanket rule essentially uh to try and keep the guys who are, if it's brown, it's down mentality from just wiping out our whitetail population. I have an issue with that because the mature side of that range is they have to have an inside spread on their antlers of 13 inches or greater in the state of Texas, or outside their ears is how Texas tells you to gauge it. Or they have to be a small deer with basically like a spike, and they have a way of, determining that too. So if I have a huge buck that just goes straight up and doesn't ever get any width, he can be a mature deer, but he's illegal. He'll walk his entire life and just he'll keep spreading those genes as well into the gene pool just because in the state of Texas he's not legal. That's where I feel like Texas lacks a healthy balance between kind of an ethical and legal standpoint, if you will. At least that's one thing that affects me. There may be something comparable in Florida, but as a law enforcement officer, how often are you having to deal with people like me who are uh, who have an issue with the legality side because it doesn't align with what they see as ethical, I guess, if that question makes sense.
I'm trying to think. The only one that I can think maybe that would be similar is redfish has changed a little bit. I think our antler restrictions for deer, at least in the zone that I'm familiar with, they're better than what they were. It used
Okay.
to only be 5 inches, so right above the ears, and it's good.
Hmm.
Now they have upped it to a 10-inch main beam or 3 points on one side, with every point being at least an inch. Which I think it's not mature, but I mean, you're not killing a 1-year-old. So, I've seen a lot more bucks. I mean, because I hunt public land as well.
Mhm.
So I've seen a lot more bucks that are bigger because of those new antler restrictions. Florida doesn't have too many big deer, but I mean, it's not bad. 120 inch. I mean, so, redfish has changed from, or actually, I'm sorry, it was trout. You used to be able to keep one per person. It's considered like a trophy catch over 20 inches. Now they've changed it to one per vessel over 20 inches as a trophy catch. So I mean, I can see why. I mean, we don't make those rules or laws. We just enforce them. But I can see where, okay, those are the breeders. So they don't want the breeders taken out. They want more trout. And who knows, it may change in the future.
Right.
But as of right now, that's what they need from their studies. So I don't think I've really heard too many complaints, to be honest with you, about
That's good.
the laws here when it comes to bag limits and size limits and stuff like that.
That's good. Well, and I mean, I would probably be the guy that I don't know. Maybe not anymore. There was a time where I probably wouldn't be the guy that complains about it to a game warden, right? But at the same time, like as a hunter and as a hunter who has matured, it's definitely a question that I've I've asked a game warden, like, hey, what's the deal with this? Why can't we do this? And they, at least here in Texas, like my game warden doesn't really have an answer, or maybe just doesn't care to answer. But
No,
yeah,
I'm the same way. We're not the brains behind these laws and regulations.
right, exactly. So are there any other areas where like you surprised me with and maybe I read something about it and just didn't realize it, but you surprised me telling me that Florida was sending y'all's game wardens to Texas down to the border on the Rio. Let me, since I now remember it. But are there any other areas that game wardens in your area in particular are active and involved with that the general public might not realize y'all are actively doing stuff?
So not only critical incidents or deployments like that, but natural disasters are huge. So any hurricane deployments, I know we did a deployment with this last hurricane that went through. I want to say it went through South Carolina or Georgia.
Mhm.
It went straight up through almost Panhandle area. So of course we'll send our centralized units to Florida first and then out for basically search and rescue, because we have specialized equipment like airboats. I don't even know what some of these machines are called, but they look crazy, like water buggies. They're insane. But specialized for these natural disasters, search and rescue missions.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty neat. So are you as a game warden, are you subject to just like something's coming and get a phone call like, hey, be ready to rock and roll type deal? Or
For the most part, they take a certain amount of people from each region, just so they're not taking a bunch of people out of one spot. So they like to take volunteers. And most people are happy to volunteer. I mean, I would have loved to go to Texas. Unfortunately, I missed out on it. I took some time off for surgery for my knee, so I didn't really have time to do it in the time span. Or else I would have loved to experience Texas. But I mean, it's mostly volunteering, and it's good because not only do you feel like you're needed and thanked, but also in the off time, you meet all of these different officers from different areas. And not only that, not just FWC, but different different states' law enforcement. Like
Mhm.
I so many people come back. It looks like my battery might be dying soon. I might have to go get a charger.
Okay. Yeah, if you need to at some point, that's fine.
Okay. But I have heard so many people come back from Operation Lone Star and say like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to be going on a hunt back in Texas and go kill an axis," because they made all these connections up there. So yeah, it's a cool opportunity. So I try to hop on anything that I can. Like I just got back from the Keys also. Not so much for deployment, but they had a detail down there for opening of lobster season, and so they needed more manpower to go and work that because it gets crazy down there during mini season and lobster season. So I went down there to work for a week, and it was good to be back for a little bit.
So explain to me what makes that crazy. Because when me trying to gain understanding of what life as a game warden in Florida in particular is like, you tell me that's crazy down there. My first thought is just that we need all these game wardens down here because all these people just be doing crime, bringing in lobsters. Maybe you can give it a little bit more educated perspective for me on what that's really like.
That is definitely number one, all the crime that goes on there, because there's so much water and there's only so many of us. We can't be everywhere at one time. So I'll give you prime example. During the time that I was down there, there was somebody that made a case. Three guys had 100 lobster, and it was out of season. The season didn't start till 2 days after that, and you're only allowed a bag limit of 6 lobster per person. So, I mean, it's kind of a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, he just happened to find these guys. It could be going on anywhere. But also, it was a rude awakening getting down there on my travel day, which is like an 8-hour drive for me to get down there. Once I got down there, and call comes out on the radio, and of course they give it to a local officer, and I'm very lucky that I was familiar with the area. I knew exactly where the call was. It was a boating accident, and it was an overturned vessel with 2 people in the water, 1 unresponsive. So it was a pretty serious call.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, where's the nearest boat? I'll hop on it. So somebody told me where the boat was. I go hop on it. I go right out there. Coast Guard's already out there. They had already taken the unresponsive guy back to shore. So already dealing with a boating accident as soon as I get down in the Keys. There's just boating accidents happen almost every single day down there. Also dive accidents. People are out there diving inexperienced, trying to catch lobster. A lot of people aren't coming down off plane when they should. When people have a dive flag up, divers get run over. It's just mayhem.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have a couple additional questions like popping in my mind as we're talking, and sorry if I haven't, done a good job prepping you for them, but what constitutes like what's the difference? What's the crime difference in a like writing somebody a ticket versus you arrested them? Like, do you get arrested for having 100 lobsters on your boat? Like, what's that line, or what's the difference in the criminal act to constitute actually arresting somebody?
Yeah, so we have a ton of discretion. So unless it's a felony, then we have no choice but to arrest. But any misdemeanor crime, which most of our resource crimes, anything fish, wildlife, that's going to be a misdemeanor, whether it's over the bag or undersized or out of season. So with lobster is the one thing that we can charge per lobster. So it's a misdemeanor per lobster. But if, say, for example, you kill 2 out of season turkeys, you can't do 2 charges. It's just 1 charge. how to see
Okay.
them. But so with our discretion, we have a few options. One, you can give a warning if it constitutes a warning. I mean, I have given plenty of them. More egregious crimes like the 100 lobster and you're trying to hide them in your vehicle, that's gonna either get a notice to appear in court. So basically you give them a piece of paper, they sign it, and they have a court date that they got to show up for. And basically the judge takes it from there and don't really decide anything. And then the third option is you could take them to jail. So we try not to do that. There are some like exceptions where you have to arrest versus a notice to appear in court. So that's going to be if they have no ties to the community. So say they're down from Pennsylvania and they're not going to come back for their court date. Sorry. I mean, you do still have the option to give them a notice to appear. It's not saying you have to, but like, who are you really looking at? Are they going to show up for the court date is the main question. So then the second is going to be, have they previously failed to appear for a court date? So if they have that history already that they're not going to show up to court, they're probably not going to show up to court. Let's see, there was a couple other ones. I think I wrote them down.
That's interesting and cool that they give y'all, I mean, I think it's a good thing that they give y'all some discretion to make those determinations and everything. It allows y'all to, I know I brought up ethics a little while ago, but it kind of allows you guys to incorporate ethics a little bit into what you're doing and the people you're interacting with, which I support. I think it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, prime example of, everybody does things differently, and I have definitely grown in my discretion. I used to be pretty harsh, and that's how I was kind of trained, is they got a violation, you address it with a ticket. But I've learned a lot, and prime example, that same turkey season that I made that case, the very next morning I went and sat at the original spot thinking, okay, maybe they'll show up for day 2. So what do you know? They showed up for day 2. And I went out there and checked him and everything. And the guy is prior military. He's never hunted a day in his life other than with a guide. And the guide didn't tell him anything. So this was his first time ever hunting by himself. And
hey guys, thanks for listening to the show. Hope you guys are enjoying it. There's so many different places that you guys can tune in to Fall Obsession Podcast, and one of them is the Outdoor Call radio app. Outdoors Dan from Respect the Game TV, he created an app that you can download on any device where you can stream hunting shows and podcasts on a loop every single day. Our show, Fall Obsession Podcast, plays on that loop on Mondays. That's the same day as our new publications on the other apps. And there's also tons of other hunting shows and podcasts on there that you guys can listen to. Go download the Outdoor Call radio app today. It is free. You can start streaming immediately. And be sure that you follow their Facebook page, because Outdoors Dan does some live radio shows throughout the week. And even if you are not local to those radio stations, his broadcasts are shared on his Facebook Live. It's Outdoors Dan and the Outdoor Call radio app. Go download it today.
5 years in, I can kind of read people and tell when they're telling me the truth or not. So although this was kind of like one thing that most people would not write warnings for, I was like, okay, I think this justifies a warning, and I don't think he's ever going to do it again. He just needed some education on it. He's not going to hunt turkeys over bait ever again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm very thankful that we have all that discretion and we don't have to be so harsh.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you ever have to deal with people, landowners, other hunters that are trying to take the law into their own hands?
Yes, all the time. um, I can't think of like a specific time off the top of my head where it like went horribly wrong, like anybody like holding somebody at gunpoint for me to get there or something like that. Um, but I think a lot of people want to, I mean, only way I can put it is like if somebody was on my property hunting and they weren't supposed to be there, I would go yell at them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But from a game warden standpoint, I'm like, no, just leave them. Let me catch them.
Yeah.
So I mean, I can get both sides. Um, but a lot of people don't understand that. Like, I can't get them for trespassing if I don't see it.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that. We've had a few issues the couple times that we have had to call a game warden or our game warden out where we're at has been when we first got this property 5 years ago. Um, we were the first people to lease it for hunting in a long time. So we quickly learned that there were a few folks in the area that knew nobody hunted it. So there were a couple times we caught people out there that weren't supposed to be out there. And one in particular that the game warden was called about, a couple kids that weren't supposed to be out there, teenagers. And it was one of those deals where it's opening weekend and he's like, "Hey, I'm busy. I ain't making it out there." Like, tell me, and I mean, maybe this makes sense to you, maybe not. I doubt nothing against him. I just doubt that he had time to do anything with it. He was like, "Get a vehicle description, a plate," and like he said that's the best I can tell you, dude, because I'm not making it out there. So we've had to deal with them in that sense. And then a couple years ago, my dad had his truck stolen out there on our property while he was hunting. So the game warden did get involved for that one, trying to help figure out where that guy was, and he eventually did get caught. But um, yeah, I've as a guy that has a hunting property and everything, I have encountered people out there. I have caught people trespassing and encountered them and told them to leave, and uh, called the game warden later, or sometimes just not even called him at all. So felt like a couple times I felt like I got my point across. So
And my dad has definitely been there, done that too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's hard to just call and not do anything about it yourself. So I understand that.
Yeah. Nobody wants the game warden on their property anyways. So,
No. Well, I'm going to try to finish these last few questions because we've been going longer than I realized we had. It's been a good conversation, but I wanted to ask you, what is the thing that you love the most about being a game warden?
um, the freedom, I would say, and being able to, well, okay, I'll change my answer a little bit. The freedom, but also the everyday is different. Like,
Hmm.
never know what call you're gonna get. Could be a boating accident. It could be a gopher tortoise call. It could be a grounded vessel. Um, could be something at 100. It could be something at 0 that you don't really want to deal with. But I don't know. Every day, I swear I learn something new. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Hmm.
I can relate. That's how I feel about my profession as well. I could not sit at a desk and do the same thing every day. I like showing up to work and having to be ready for anything, but not knowing what's about to happen. So it's
Right.
I enjoy that part. What is what's a unique, you've already shared some unique situations, but what is a unique situation that since you've had this profession, you've kind of either been involved in, exposed to, responded to, that you'd be willing to share?
A unique situation. I that's a hard question.
Yeah,
But
I don't want to make it, I don't want to complicate it. I'm always weary of asking people like I try not to ask the question on, what I hate it when people ask me what's the worst thing you've ever seen, right? As a fireman, I hate fielding that question. So I want to be respectful of that. That's why I frame it that way. But just a unique circumstance or an unusual circumstance uh, that you've encountered.
Okay. I got it. Okay. When you put it that way, I got it.
Yeah.
So couple, I'll say memorable instances down working in the Keys, which is high call volume, so there's always something to get into. But I was working on the boat, and one thing that I really liked to work with one of my buddies was commercial fisheries down there. So there's these commercial fishermen that harvest stone crab and lobster commercially, and some of them are great, some of them are not so great. So we were down working in Marathon, and we happened to see this boat headed inshore in to where they port. And so we were like, okay, well, let's go check that one. It looks like they're done for the day. And when they're done for the day, they're not allowed any undersized lobster. But if they were still working traps, they are allowed a certain number of lobster undersized, because they like to stock their traps with undersized lobster when they put them back in the water. But these guys clearly looked like they were headed back to port. So we were like, okay, perfect. So we start heading towards them, and we're in a marked unit. And as soon as we get maybe within 100 yards from them, they obviously see us, because then they go from us seeing their starboard side to turning bow to bow. And I know exactly what that means. They're dumping stuff off the back of the boat, because when their bow is facing us, we can't see what's happening behind that. So I whip it around, and as soon as we whipped it around, we can see somebody off the port side dumping a 5-gallon bucket. Don't know what was in the 5-gallon bucket. We tried to mark it with a marker and have our dive team come out there and look for evidence of whatever they dumped. But we ended up doing a full inspection and finding, I want to say, like 50 or so undersized lobster, and then some undersized stone crab claws as well. So for a commercial business to be keeping and hiding all of these undersized products, it's not a great look, because this is what for a living. They know the regulations. So yeah, that was a pretty good case. And we never found out what they dumped. If we had found out that they dumped saltwater products of any kind, then that would be considered a felony. So we got them on a bunch of misdemeanors. It is what it is. But that was a more memorable case, because we finally got some of the bad guys that we were after.
Yeah.
And then let's see. Oh, it was one of the nights that there were some migrants coming in on a Cuban chug, and it was a pretty big chug. I want to say there was at least 100 people on it. Or actually, yeah, it was Haitians. So they were coming straight basically towards a sandbar, and it was right before sunset. Coast Guard was out there, Border Patrol was out there. Coast Guard is doing warning shots. Coast Guard's trying to cut their sail, because they had a sail. That's all they're basically using to get Haiti to the Keys, which is insane.
Wow.
I don't know how long that trip takes, but I'm out on that.
Wow.
So, and they're like jam packed, like maybe this much room in between people. It's crazy. So Coast Guard's trying to give them life jackets, and they're not taking the life jackets, and they're basically kind of being somewhat aggressive towards us. So we're kind of on standby, just trying to make sure, because we know as soon as they hit that sandbar, they're going to all start swimming towards shore, and they're at least 100 yards from shore. So again, our main mission is just to ensure public safety and making sure nobody's drowning, nobody's getting hit by a boat or anything like that. So of course they hit the sandbar. They figure out they're not really going anywhere, and Coast Guard's trying to get like them on their boat. They're like, nope. They think that once they get to land, they're good. I don't really know what happens from there.
Yeah.
But we then start seeing them flood into the water. And this is like 100 people jumping into the water. Half of them don't have life jackets. We're trying to give them life jackets. They're pushing them away. We'll pull up to one of them, swim into shore, and say, "Hey, get on our boat," because we're trying to help them out. We don't want them to like struggle.
Right.
And they're saying no, no, no. So we're like, okay, fine. We'll just sit here and we'll just like make sure everybody's okay. We're not gonna force somebody to get onto our boat. So then all of a sudden, there's a big bridge that was right there. All of a sudden, we start seeing some of them go under the bridge. And once you go past that bridge, you're going to the Gulf. Like there's no more land that you're going to. So you better swim against that current and come back or get on our boat. So we tried to tell them that, and they finally realized that, and they were being swept away by the current. They couldn't swim hard to get back. And so they finally got onto our boat. We ended up picking up, I want to say 5 or 6 that had been swept under the bridge and giving them life jackets. And then, so I had a trainee at the time. I was training somebody. And so I was just telling him, hey, I'm going to drive the boat because this is a pretty serious situation. I don't want you to run somebody over. Let me do the boat handling. So pick up 6 of them, and then all of a sudden I see one of them starts foaming at the mouth, and I'm like, great. So luckily we had EMS stationed like right there, so we haul butt into there and get them looked at, and turns out he's just faking it. Because he wanted onto land. He didn't want to go back to wherever he came from. But no, I mean, it's a good feeling knowing that we saved maybe 6 of them from being swept away to the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So that was another crazy night.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Is it like circumstances like this? Is this kind of one of those deals where like once you and maybe not necessarily the folks coming from Haiti, but I mean, you talked about, the fishing boat before that and everything. And is this one of those deals where like once you get a bust or get a case out there, one time, it kind of sets the precedent maybe for some other people that have been doing the same thing that kind of get their act together because they don't want to get busted? Is that a theme, or is there just always stuff happening, you feel like?
Oh, there's always stuff happening.
Okay, I figured.
They just know there's only so many of us, and I feel like they were starting to pick up on what shifts that we were working. So they know when to go and do stuff and how to get away with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people will find a way, that's for sure. Well, the last question that I want to ask relevant to your profession and everything is if you have any advice for anyone else out there, maybe Florida or maybe any state just in general terms that are interested in becoming a game warden. If you got anything you'd like to pass on.
If it's something that you're passionate about, don't give up on it. I mean, like I said, it took me at least a year or 2 to get into it. And of course I didn't get in my first go round, and there's nothing wrong with that. That happens to the best of us. So don't let that be the reason that you don't keep trying. Just get more experience, do more community outreach, stuff like that. Yeah. So another thing piece of advice is, oh, one thing that we talked about was like, one thing that I heard about getting into this job is like, you won't hunt as much because you're going to be too busy. No, that's not true.
maybe you gotta be busy a little bit at the beginning, it sounded like, but it sounds like you're still able to pursue your passions outside of your profession as well. So
Might have to forfeit some sleep and some social life, but it is
yeah,
what it
yeah,
is.
that's part of it for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I am going to ask you, not relevant to the game warden, real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. I'm sure I probably asked these questions 5 years ago when we had you on the show, but they might have changed now for all I know, and that was a while back. So I'm going to ask them again. Ask every guest that we have on here for the first time, or if it's been a long time. I ask these questions, and the first one is, what is your favorite hunting memory to date?
I don't know if this is the same answer as what I said last time, but I just recently talked about this with somebody else. There was a time I guided for the women's hunt through NWTF, and me and her hunted that afternoon. This was for turkey, and it was starting to storm. I knew where there was a field bird, but he was going to be really hard to work because he wasn't hanging out on our side of the property. So it started thundering a little bit, and I heard him hammering in the field. So I'm like, okay, well, let's just go and try. I mean, that's the only bird that I know of that's around here right now. So we go and we sit like parallel to the property line, and had a couple decoys out, and he's hammering to my calls, and he's hammering to the thunder and lightning, which was the coolest thing I've ever seen and heard. So he finally makes his way. I don't know what, if he was with hens or if he was just out in the field by himself. That could have been the reason why he came to us. But to hear him gobble to the thunder was just like the coolest thing. I've never experienced that.
That's pretty cool.
He came in perfect. She shot him, and then it just starts to downpour. I was like, okay, we got to hurry up and get out of here. It just worked out perfectly for us. So that's definitely one of the coolest memories. And that was her very first turkey ever.
Wow. Yeah, what a memory. That's awesome. Awesome for both of y'all for sure. Last question. What is on your hunting bucket list? What's a once in a lifetime or maybe multiple once in a lifetime hunts that you hope to do one day?
I don't really have anything specific. I just know that I'd love to kill a Boone and Crockett whitetail one deer or one day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can relate. Most guests that I have, they have big game on the mind. I've heard elk, mule deer, moose, caribou, uh, some African animals. A guy I had on the show recently, he said a leopard. Never had anybody say that before. And mine, number one would be a caribou, I think. But I tell people, I was like, I want to go to the Midwest and kill a whitetail. And their immediate response is, why? You hunt whitetails in Texas. You have nice deer in Texas. I'm like, I do. We do. Absolutely. But just there's something different about being in a Midwest tree stand with a bow and hunting a giant whitetail buck. Just so.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said I'm right there with you.
Yeah, exactly. It's just it would be a special thing for sure. But that's awesome. Well, Courtney, did we miss anything, or is there anything you'd like to add before we conclude?
I mean, I did have a lot of other things that I wanted to touch on, but I mean, maybe that just means we have to have another conversation.
We can save it for another time, or if there's anything you want to hit on, I'm getting close to the end of my notes and everything here, which is why I'm kind of steering for home, but I'm more than happy to talk about anything else that you got. So,
I mean, I guess just a couple other things that I wanted to add when you asked the question about kind of like where we might be and what we do and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, public safety is number one for us. We're law enforcement above everything. So, basic law enforcement over wildlife and fish. So if we see a car crash, we're going to stop and help out with the car crash. But for the most part, our safety stuff comes into play for boating. So boating safety is huge, and there's a lot of boating safety equipment that you need. And that's one of the main things that we go over. Also, BUIs is one of our core missions. A little different from DUIs, but still the same breath sample, or that same 0.08. And then, I mean, basic traffic stuff. So I know every time I see FHP or the county out stopped with the vehicle, I like to stop and back them up, because I would hope they do the same thing for me.
Yeah.
And then when it comes in the hunting aspect, as far as safety goes, like that hunter orange, making sure everybody's wearing hunter orange. Gun ethics. We do a lot of outreach events also. So we go to these hunter safety courses and we'll teach them the laws. Not only that, other outreach events we go to and just kind of like tell them what we do and like make sure kids are more comfortable around us. Like we're not out trying to like get anybody in trouble. We're just there to make sure everything is correct. And
yeah, you're not just hiding in the bushes waiting for somebody to mess up. So
right.
Yeah.
So that's about it that I wanted to hit on.
That's good. I'm glad you did. I'm glad you stopped me, because that is good perspective for everyone, because I'm sure there are folks out there who might not get along with their local game warden for whatever reason. Doesn't mean they did something bad, but maybe they just don't connect very well, and have a bad taste in their mouth for a game warden. But at the end of the day, you guys are doing a whole lot more than just enforcing fish and game laws. So, and that's good perspective to share. I appreciate you doing that. So
thank you. Now I get it, and I was going to mention this also, is like even me being a game warden, when I go and hunt out of state, like if I see a game warden, my heart starts beating a little quick. I don't want to be checked either.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get it. We're people too. Yeah.
I'm the same way. Like if I kill a deer and I pull in the processor and I see his truck sitting there, I'm like, oh, did I do everything right? Did I fill out my license the right way? Did I do all right? In Texas right now is like, you talked at the beginning about Florida and y'all having everything like online based now, electronic based for your tagging and accountability system for your game. Texas is doing that, but they're not only doing that. They still you can do that, or you can do like the physical tags on the animal.
Oh.
Like they haven't gone one way or the other yet. So I feel like for me, that's like in my mind, it would just add confusion. Like I feel like it should be one or the other, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know why that's the way that they're doing it, but
sounds a little more difficult to enforce also.
Yeah, that would be my thought from y'all's perspective, but yeah, that's been interesting. I remember, because I still hunt with my dad. I remember the first time he saw my buddy Nick like filling it out on his phone, he was mind blown. He was like, "What are you doing? Like you're tagging your deer on your phone?" He couldn't believe it. So yeah. Well, Courtney, thank you very much for coming back on the show. And we won't wait 5 years before we do it again this next time. So
that's good. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, for our listeners, thank you all for tuning in to another Fall Obsession podcast. I will be back with you guys again next week. Catch you then.